Hello, what's going on? Doug Cunnington here. And this is the live stream, of course, Q&A. I'll answer some questions about affiliate marketing and SEO, probably keyword research. Someone is certainly going to ask about AI writers, and I'll try to handle that in a mature fashion. It's an inside joke for the people that tune into these pretty often. Let me know in the chat if you could hear me. If you do have a question, you ask in the chat, and then I'll hop over there and I'll answer them slowly. One other thing that may happen is I'll probably get a question repeated a couple times, which will also be really fun. I'll try to stay cool. And I'm going to point you towards a couple things. So one area is there's an FAQ section on my site, Niche Site Project. So you can hop over there and have a look at the FAQ section. Probably a link in the description there. There are many questions, maybe questions that you have, maybe questions you haven't thought of yet. But then you'll realize, oh, that's a pretty good question. I know why people ask that. So I want to thank a couple sponsors before we get too deep into it. And let me quickly thank those folks. So number one, Odys Global, they're the source for premium age domains. I'm going to roll an ad from them in a little bit that I recorded earlier. That'll give me a chance to rest my voice here for a minute and take a short little break. The other one is Ezoic and their product Leap. Ezoic in general. Ezoic's great. I've been working with them for a few years and have a website that I just turned on the ads for in the last little bit, and it's been great as far as a monetization standpoint. And it's an optimization phase right now, but Leap is something that'll help you get green in Core Web Vitals, and it's free if you monetize with Ezoic. You just have to change a couple settings, and they'll actually go have a look and see, basically they'll check out your site and make recommendations based on that. Also want to thank Niche Website Builders. And for this specific week, I actually forgot to update the notes here in the show notes. You can save 15% for any of the link building packages, or you can get 15% more content. So a little promo that is exclusive just for the audience you here today. So that is valid through the end of the week. Please check it out. You can get the coupon codes if you follow the link in the description, and they help sponsor all the people I just mentioned. Odys, Ezoic, and Niche Website Builders sponsor these live streams. So please support the sponsors. It's why I do them. All right. And I'm going to hop in and ask the question or answer the questions, and I will go through here. So I see a couple people. John's grabbing a beer. Yeah, I see your questions that you asked earlier. I see the questions. So we'll hop over there in just a second. And actually, yeah, we'll just jump into it. So one person asked a question before I even started, and it's hidden in the little area, but they emphasize the need for beginners to have all the latest information. And I told that person in the chat to just go look at the other videos in the channel. There's like, 1 or 2 per week for the whole year. And if you want to go back just a little bit further, all of those are very current. And it's just, honestly, it's a fire hose of information. So there's going to be more info than you think. So just have a look. It's all there. It's all right there. John says, I watched the episode with Adam Smith the other day. He mentioned having 300 links. I'm getting a bunch of the Nofollow spammy links. Do I need to do anything about that? Your site is pretty new, like a month old. It's a fresh domain. Google is indexing really well, and you see 150 sessions in the first month. What are my thoughts? Is this low, medium, high? Okay. So John, number one, do you need to do anything about the spammy nofollow links? I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would keep an eye on it. It's important to look to see if it's like 300, and I know that you're using Adam's example, if it's 300 backlinks or 300 referring domains. Basically, Google's pretty good at understanding these spammy nofollow links. Technically, it shouldn't, it's nofollow, so Google shouldn't be considering them. I believe this is unsubstantiated, and people may test this, but I believe there's probably some threshold where you get enough of the no follow links that it actually still does trigger some negative thing. I think it is some huge number. So I would keep an eye on it. I wouldn't worry about it too much. And in the future, you may hop into Search Console and say, hey, don't recognize any links from this domain. My hunch is it's a handful of domains, and you could probably just say, don't recognize any of these, 5,000 links from this specific domain. That makes it a little bit easier. And John says, my site's pretty new and you're getting 150 sessions per month. What are my thoughts? Is that high, medium, low? So it's an interesting question. I wish I can give you more. It's great. You're making progress. You're getting some organic sessions. And I know there are some people that hop onto these live streams, or in general, right, that do a lot of work and they get fewer than 150 sessions after like 4 months. So I would say you're making progress and that's fantastic. The piece of the puzzle here that we don't know is I have no clue how much effort you have put in. So if you publish 10 articles and you're getting 150 sessions in the first month, I think that's great. If you publish 10,000 articles and you're getting 150 sessions in the first month, that's probably off target. So it's really important to know how much effort you put in. So just to be safe, I'll say medium. I'll say medium. But you're making progress and you're grabbing a beer, which seems like a really good idea. Nice. One thing I did today, I went to the grocery store, and it's such a small luxury, but when you're working for yourself, or even when you're working remotely, which a lot of us do these days, you can run errands in the middle of the day. And I have been working from home for probably, some capacity since like 2008 or something like that. And it started small and grew, but it's been a long time since I have just gone to the office. And now, don't get me wrong, say like in 2008 to 2012 or so, when I did have to go to the office, I was driving like 60 miles a day. Like it was pretty far. I lived sort of in the downtown area, and I have to drive like way up to the suburbs, and it took a while. Luckily, it was against traffic, but if you live in a big suburban sprawling city, there's traffic in both directions. Rush hour starts at like 3. I mean, you're sitting in traffic no matter what. But I went to the grocery store just a few minutes ago, and I rarely do it. I love coffee, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna grab a coffee before I do my shopping, and it just felt a little luxurious. I mean, I make coffee here at home and enjoy the whole ritual of doing that. But they've got nice fresh coffee. I mean, Starbucks is fine. I know some people hate it, but they have one at the front of the grocery store. They make it ultra convenient, and technically I could have stopped by one of the local shops close by here, but I got the Starbucks because it was convenient and it tastes pretty good. So, but yeah, you're grabbing a beer. It's early. It's a little early in the day. I'm trying to cut back a little bit too on just like the number of calories, which I'll back into in a second. I got no topics today. We're just answering questions and talking random stuff, telling stories. I mean, I wrote it in there. I'll answer some questions, but could be a lot of stories. David's on. What's happening, David? Good to have you on. He's helping keep order in the chat there. Thank you. Oh, Chris is on. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody's good. All right. GTFO says you picked up an expired domain. Should you 404 all old links to the homepage or just select the best ones with the juice? I probably wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do either one of those. So I wouldn't do that. I would probably recreate those pages in some capacity, and then, don't copy the old content, but I would publish something new there, and then I would put links to pass the link juice to where you want it to go. I wouldn't 404. That's the kind of shit we did, 5-6 years ago. I think there potentially still could be a little bit of value in doing that, but it's what we were doing, like, not even 5 or 6 years ago. That's what we were doing like 8 years ago, which is basically when I first started. So there's a chance people were doing that before. So that's an old school way, kind of lazy. You could do better than that. What's up, a nomad overseas? Gaz is on. What's happening? And a nomad overseas says that Spotify and Discord have gone offline. I didn't notice, but to be fair, I'm not in there too often. And, funny thing with Spotify, I mean, I think a lot of people are using it as sort of their primary, like, listener player, both podcast and music. I got away from it. I think I actually paid for Spotify for like a couple years, like 5-6 years ago. And I was like, the price went up, and I was like, I'm not going to pay for it. Maybe I got it included with something else that I use. But yeah, I don't use Spotify. I don't really like Spotify, which people seem to really love it. So perhaps I'm missing something. But I'm living my life and I'm pretty happy. So I think whatever I'm doing is probably okay. Spotify might solve a problem which I don't have. The only reason I actually got Spotify is I wanted to listen to a couple of the Joe Rogan podcasts in the last year, and I literally only use Spotify for that. But people seem to really like it. So that said, I haven't noticed it was offline, nor Discord. Didn't know that either. Jason's on. What's happening? All right. John says, further, thanks for touching base on those. There's a lot of content. You wrote a lot up front. You made beginner's mistakes of writing on some stuff that won't rank, i.e. too competitive, which I think, that can be okay. Like, typically, especially a lot of us are aiming for low competition, very long tail keywords, but there's nothing wrong with publishing content that is more competitive. Maybe it's not going to rank, but it helps your site be more complete. Maybe you need that content there. And God says, my second site is 2 months old. You launched it with 10 articles, all discovered, not indexed. 4 weeks later, Google is slowly indexing at its leisure. Good. And John, I think you said that your site is indexing well. I'm curious if you have any tips. That's a common question. People are worried. Hey, my site is not indexing. What do I do? And I mean, I think the best advice is publish more content and get some backlinks. A lot of people don't want to get backlinks. They're against it. They're scared of it. They don't want to be rejected. They're afraid of Google updates. And actually got an email the other day. Excuse me. Got an email the other day, and someone said, I love it when people email me, so I have to make sure I don't frame things in a complainy way. No one wants to hear me complain. But someone did email me, and they said, hey, I created a website. I don't know who the fuck this person is, by the way. Not a student of mine. No one that shows up here. Just some rando. So they said, hey, I created a website. It's earning, $300 a month. It's age domain. $300 a month. I've been working on it 6 months. So they're doing something right. And they said, hey, I'm nervous though. I'm nervous about a Google update coming out in July. And I'm afraid it's going to hurt my site. And, we have no idea on the internet. I think it could have been a pretty young person, like maybe a teenager, something like that. And they were just like, hey, should I sell it? Because I'm so scared of Google updates in the future. Unfortunately, I don't know. There's some pros and cons with selling a site, of course. And this person, I think, I mean, I'm a pretty calm person. I think probably fairly rational, and I try not to worry too much. There's plenty of stuff to worry about, of course, but the the interesting thing is this person seemed 100% convinced that there was going to be a Google update that was going to hurt his site. So he was like, hey, they always come out, which is true. I mean, they come out all the time, but he just thought, hey, should I unload it now before the update comes along? And the answer is, I don't know. You can sell it if you want. There's a chance that your site could be impacted. There's a chance there's no update coming when the person thought, and they were extremely specific. They were like, hey, there's going to be an update in this specific month. And we can look back historically and say, you know what, there have been updates on those months more years than not. But it was just sort of a fear scarcity based situation. And they're like, hey, should I flip it? And well, I mean, I didn't give them a straight answer. Like I said, I didn't know who the person was. And I think people that have that show up on these, maybe you're on my email list, or if you're a student, I treat you with great respect. I'll answer any question you want. I won't make fun of you on a live stream or anything like that, like I am right now to that guy. But this individual was a little, I don't want to say disrespectful, but it was one of those where they asked a question and they were like, please reply ASAP. And I'm like, oh, come on, dude. Let's start a little bit slower and try not to give me assignments, random person. So anyway, they could sell it, get those profits, get a couple years of profits sort of up front, maybe 2-3 years of profits. The thing is, the site's so young, they probably wouldn't be able to get a huge multiple, but maybe they can get an okay one. So anyway, I can't remember the full point there, but it was tough to answer. And I can't really tell people, hey, you should sell it or you shouldn't sell it. It depends on your specific situation and what you value. If the person needed the money more quickly, sure. If they were thinking, hey, I can grow the site huge, maybe consider that, right? There's no right or wrong answer. Some people want to buy a site and hold it. Some people want to build a site from scratch and then flip it and then maybe level up. And, John was asking about Adam Smith, who, to my knowledge, he's only purchased sites and then worked on them to improve the revenue and traffic and maybe the conversion rate and generally the earnings, and then he may sell it later. He hangs on to some of them too. So there's no right or wrong answer. You just have to think about what's important to you and what you're trying to do. Like I said, I think the person emailing me may have been young. And I think I've noticed maybe it's a lack of self-awareness or a lack of, maybe it's that. So people will say, hey, you need to get me this answer ASAP. And I'm not sure who they are. But it makes for, hopefully, at least it makes for a story. I hope it was slightly amusing. All right, let's get back to it. Thanks everyone for asking questions here. Anthony's on. What's up? And so is Chris. Nick says, thanks for doing these. Is it okay to let a site sit for 4 to 6 months after writing 150 to 200 articles without writing anything new? Or should I write a new article once a month for SEO purposes? Nick, so I think either way is fine. One of the realities is if you keep publishing content, you'll probably get more traffic in the future. If you want to let it sit for 4 to 6 months and not write anything, that's fine. It'll probably continue growing for a little while and then potentially level out. But honestly, this kind of goes back to, what I was just mentioning before, where you have to look at what's important to you. Maybe you are doing something else for a little while, for the 4 to 6 months. So you want to spend your effort elsewhere or your resources elsewhere. That's totally fine. There's no issue with that. And there will be an effect from it, and it will probably be a little leveling off. Like I said, it'll probably grow for a little while, level off. And then, if you publish one article per month, it's not going to magically make your site not level off. And it's not going to magically keep your site from, dropping in rankings through neglect. It may not matter at all, right? There's way too many variables. So I wouldn't feel the pressure to write an article once a month. Frankly, I think just writing, if you published a shitload of content for a while and then you started publishing one article per month, you may as well publish 0 articles per month. It's probably not going to make a difference at all. And I often forget to put up, I have these little guys here, right? You can get all my templates if you sign up for the email list. There's a link in the description. And one plug that I need to give as well is for the live stream that I'm doing with Alex and Niche Website Builders tomorrow. So Mark and Adam are going to be on as well. It's going to be over on Alex's channel, WP Eagle. There's a link in the description for that. And a lot of people here, I know you're already subscribed to Alex's stuff. So yeah, certainly check that out. It's going to be a new show. We're going to do it weekly. And I'm a little nervous because, there's a lot of live streams that, Alex does 2. I do 1. So I think it'll be it's just going to be us hanging out. Basically, we're going to have the chat, of course. So it's going to be really fun. And it'll be early in the morning for me. It'll be in the afternoon for them. So it'll be 8 a.m. for me and it'll be on Wednesday. So do check it out. There's some time zone stuff going on. So in a couple weeks when I host it on my channel, it's going to be a little bit earlier, but we're adjusting our clocks here in the US. At least a lot of the states are on this weekend. So I think it's like the 13th. So thanks everybody for hopping on. I see we're getting a few more people, and let's get to a handful more questions. And I can use this cool Niche Website Builders. Like I said, this week only is actually 15% off, and you can get 15% additional content. So do check it out. I'll make this smaller. There's links in the description, but I'll put this here so you can see the logo. And okay, Gaz says you think the indexing thing is now part of the sandbox. Okay, so what leads you to believe that? Is there true evidence, or it just seems like those go hand in hand? John says, when I wrote my content up front, I've been drip publishing 1 article today. Also, you went to the Search Console and requested indexing on maybe 5, but like showing at least 50 articles indexed. Okay. And John says, Google likes consistent publishing, and you installed the Bing Webmaster plugin. So I think, so John, and we're picking this apart, right? We're digging into the nuance. If you're watching this, like, the general stuff. So you're stating that Google likes consistent publishing. Does Google like consistent publishing or just a whole lot of content? So I'm curious if you have information on just having a whole lot of content versus consistent publishing. So if consistent publishing makes a difference, then, back to Nick's question, we're publishing an article once a month for SEO purposes. If Google truly does like consistent publishing, maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe once a month isn't enough, but maybe you should publish once a week or something like that. So I'm curious, is it consistent publishing or is it just a shitload of content? And I don't know. I'm wrong about stuff all the time. Jody says, does the KGR work with e-commerce? Keyword golden ratio. Yeah, KGR works with anything. There's no issue. It doesn't matter It doesn't matter what the site is about. Ariel is on. Ariel. I got it down. It's good. It's good. All right, Nick says to hit the like button. Yeah, thanks, folks, for hitting the like button. I forget to ask and all that. Chris says, how are you today? Reply ASAP. Yeah, it was good. It's good. Good day. Woke up a little earlier than I wanted to. No big deal. I would love it if I could sleep in just a little bit more, but I woke up at like 5, did a, kind of a short, easy workout, walked the dog. And yeah, it's pretty good day so far. Got a little work done. And I'm actually speaking at a small conference, a small retreat. It's called Camp Fi, and it's financial independence based. So I'm speaking at that at the end of March, and that should be pretty fun overall. It'll be my first talk in front of people like this size. So it'll be like 60 people or so. And I'm going to talk about side hustles and how I got started. And for the people that don't know, I have a whole other podcast about financial independence and personal finance. There's a link in the show notes. It's called Mile High Fi. And a lot of the thoughts are around retiring early, although I continue to work, and that's actually what my talk is about, how I got into side hustles. And I work, right? Some people, I'm not going to get a corporate job, and some people may actually define what I'm doing as like retired. I don't really care. It doesn't matter. Some people get really upset and they're like, you're not retired. You still earn money. And it's like, it's focusing on the wrong part. So I never even say I'm retired or anything like that. So anyway, one thing that I did this morning was work on the talk. And it's going to be, I believe, about 20 minutes or so. And then a lot of Q&A. It's mostly discussion. And I'm going to work very hard on keeping the presentation within the time limit that I was given. So I went to one of these events before, and the speakers are given the instructions to talk for 20 minutes, and some people talked for over an hour. It completely fucks up the schedule. And there's not even a tight schedule at these specific events. It's very leisurely. So it's kind of interesting when people do that. And I guess it's harder to give a short talk that is concise. And I wrote out everything. I had an outline, and then I wrote everything out, and I need to trim about 20% or so, which is nice. There's some pieces that I put in, and I'm like, oh, it's important for me to say that. But when you tighten it up, it's all going to be just a little bit more powerful, I hope. And Sue is on as well. David says, I have a site about theme parks. Cool. I've written a small description of each ride and a ride guide. Should I create an FAQ for each ride? Answer 40 to 50 questions from Keyword Chef, or would it look too spammy? No, I think that's cool. Q&A is a perfect way to approach it. You can use, you don't have to use Keyword Chef. You could use like any tool. So if you like using Keyword Chef, that is completely fine. And I'm just making that point. I'm pretty agnostic on the tools. I don't care what tool people use. So if you find one that you like, just go with it. And I think putting FAQs would be totally fine. And I think an FAQ page for each ride could be fine. There's no right or wrong way to organize that information. You could put each question on its own like child page, for example, and have like a big cluster and just have a very short piece of content for each one of the questions and answers. You could put them all on the main page. You could put all the FAQs on one page. And I would say, think about how it could be most useful for one of the searchers. So there's no right way to do it. there are just different options that you have. And if you could find 40 to 50 questions, then maybe putting those on one page works pretty well. So it's not too long. And actually, if people have an opinion, you may think, hey, you really should do it this certain way or that certain way. So let us know in the chat. And then John's in from New Zealand. What's happening? All right. And Gaz says, indexing drip feed. I have no data, only anecdotal, but it's my feeling that Google are scrutinizing content more. Cool. John says it's a great question, and this goes back to consistently publishing versus just having a lot of content. John thinks it's a mix, but they are getting more familiar with your site, and certainly that means more content is hitting the site too. John says some articles rank super fast. Why is that? Fuck if I know. If anyone has an idea, tell us. And there's so many variables, right? So it's probably, one of the 200 plus ranking factors. If you have a site that is already ranking pretty well, like you could probably rank a lot faster. And then the other part of it, when you peel back all the other things, right? All the other 200 ranking factors, it's probably the quality of the content and the competition of the keyword. I think it probably comes down to those two main areas. Zutron says, any ideas on reviving a website that got hacked and has hundreds of hacked pages, indexed by Google, now going to 404? No, I haven't had to deal with that, but I know there are guides online, and I think there's probably a support page with Google that tells you what to do if your site has spam, if it's been hacked. And I think generally you tell Google to not recognize those pages anymore. I think slowly it can happen naturally since they're going to a 404. But if you explicitly do that, then I think it can happen much faster. And Alex is on and says, looking forward to the show tomorrow. Me too. It's going to be awesome. All right. I'll do one more, and I feel my voice is getting a little tired. So we'll hit the ad roll in just a second here. And guys says, my ultimate goal is to not have to switch off an alarm clock at 6 a.m., do an hour commute, run a construction site in the rain and mud. Yeah, amen to that, for sure. For sure. That's one of the big things. I haven't used an alarm in a very, very long time. I wake up kind of early anyway, so I don't technically need to use an alarm. But yeah, once I stopped going into the office on a regular basis, I stopped using an alarm. And actually for a couple years, I was a little annoyed my wife still had to use an alarm. And I'm like, I wish she would just turn that off. She would hit the snooze as well. And I'm like, just go ahead and get up. Or set your alarm further out. Why are you waking me up too? But she doesn't set an alarm these days either. All right, so let's roll the ad and I'll be right back. We just got to let my voice rest just a little bit here. And boom. From Odys, that's ODYS.global, and they are a sponsor of these live streams. So we really appreciate it. And the featured domain for today is gaest.com. And this domain is basically a place where there was a marketplace that's a little redundant for unique spaces for meetings, workshops, photo shoots, and etc. So people could basically book those unique spots. Now, it was created in 2012, so it's about 10 years old. Currently, the domain rating is 34, and the domain authority is 36. And the very interesting thing is, I believe now this site potentially could have a little bit more power, a little bit more interest just in general because of remote working. digital nomad lifestyle and just generally people looking for other places to work. The pandemic probably helped out as well, just pushing a lot of people that worked in offices to remote work or to work from home. And potentially, I've heard this from friends, it's not great to work in a house if you have a full family. So, we don't have any kids. We just have Georgie who's sitting behind me sleeping. She rarely disturbs me. But if you are dealing with a family full of people and they're trying to do their own work, they're trying to maybe do homeschooling or something like that. And when I say people, I mean your children. So anyway, people might be looking a little bit more to find places to work, to find a workspace. And this also counts for like events. There were certainly a few occasions when I planned an event for the corporate gig that I had, and I would need to book a spot for 50 or 60 people and do catering and all this stuff. So a site like this could actually be a great way to push traffic into those areas. And as far as like blogging content and informational content, you probably could come up with a whole set of things about remote working, a bunch of informational topics, question-based generally. One of the reasons we look at these old premium domains, these age domains, is because of the backlinks. This particular domain has 180 referring domains. 153 of them are do follow. They are pretty amazing links. Some of them are techcrunch.com, BuzzFeed, CB Insights, Lexology, some other things I don't know what they are, zdnet.fr, pitchbook.com, and so on. All the ones that I'm showing you on this page, they're over 70 DR. So some pretty kick-ass links, and it doesn't look like there's any garbage on here. These are legit sites in general. When I took a look at the Wayback Machine, there were pieces here and there. And actually, now that I look at this, it looks like back in 2007, I didn't venture back there, but at one point this domain was active and there were some snapshots then. Looks like nothing happened for a few years. And then when I did take a look at the more modern versions of the site, well, number one, I saw that the Wayback Machine lost some of the formatting and CSS and that sort of thing. But there are notes from, featured on type things. So it says they trust us. It's Google, IKEA, KPMG, Microsoft, Singapore Airlines, some other things I haven't heard of. But when you scroll down, again, the formatting is messed up, and that happens on the Wayback Machine sometimes. You can see some pretty nice office spaces, and you can imagine that maybe, I'm just making it up, but maybe Google had a little outing for a team on this houseboat type thing. There's some other more sophisticated looking places with table arrangements, which look super nice. And there's some sort of flower or small tree thing situation happening there. So the point is, the site was pretty nice looking back in the day. So if you want to check out Odys, you can join using my affiliate link and you can get $100 into your account, which I greatly appreciate if you do. And I might get a little bonus if you do, or a commission. I keep saying bonus, but they send me a commission if you happen to buy something. So thanks to Odys, and certainly do check them out. All right. And we're back. We'll answer some more questions here. And I can hop over. Oh yeah, David says, thanks. Appreciate it. It sounded simple when you describe it. But you're new to this and it's one big mystery. You need to check out the course. Yeah, sure, David. I mean, everything's new. There's a lot of information out there. And John asked about playing a guitar riff for an outro. So I was like, I'll just get out the guitar right now. May as well. So I talked a minute ago about not drinking as much beer. And I mean, right now, it's lunchtime. It's lunchtime, so typically not going to have a beer at lunchtime unless I've worked out. Honestly, I go through periods. Sometimes I will have a lunch beer. It's a luxury, not just not having to sit in traffic, but you can't have a lunch beer if you want one. But in the podcast that my friend and I are working on, we cover some lifestyle topics, and we do kind of a longer episode on Tuesdays and then sort of a shorter one, or at least some of them are shorter, for Friday. And one of the shorter one was about fitness. And my friend Carl was just talking about like getting into shape, and he had gotten a little out of shape through the pandemic, and then like up and down. And one of the things that we talk about often is around how busy Carl is. So it's a topic all the time. And he's one of these guys that buys a fixer upper, and then they redo the house, and they've done several of them. And it's turns out it's a lot of work. And he's really busy, and he's learned a ton. He's like leveled up and done more and more impressive things, and essentially can turn a house into exactly what he wants. But it does come at a cost. Part of that cost is time and focus. And one thing that he was focusing on quite a bit at the beginning, or before the pandemic and right at the beginning, was fitness. And he's mentioned that he's been, or he was in his best shape right at the beginning of the pandemic. And then he had to homeschool his kids, and other pieces got in the way. So basically, his fitness suffered. So we recently did a show about fitness, and Carl basically said, what if we had some sort of a challenge where we had to, I can't remember if it was just specifically, hey, what if we have to take a picture with our shirts off in a few months? Would that motivate you more? And I'm not like in perfect shape, but I'm pretty stable. I've been like roughly the same weight, like roughly pretty stable. But I was like, sure, yeah, actually that would motivate me more to do, harder workouts and work out more. And I thought it was just a quick passing episode. It's what Carl and I were going to talk about anyway. And I thought, hey, let's record it. And then I got a lot of feedback. We got more feedback on that show than anything else. It is a personal finance podcast. So Carl got some emails, people mentioned it to me, and it was a very popular topic. So I have been trying to work out a little bit harder, because one of my issues is I'm consistent, but I don't have any specific goals. So I wasn't working out hard for anything. So I go to the gym often, but I'm not trying to do anything. I needed to put on basically more muscle. I think I need to eat more and work out harder. So I have been consuming a lot more protein, and Carl's actually on a cut right now. So he's trying to lose some weight before he actually works out a little bit more. So that's why I'm not drinking as many beers. So I'm honestly, I'm sleeping better too, which is sad, because I really do like to drink the beers, but it completely fucks up my sleep. So, all right, now we got a couple more questions coming in here. And we have John asking, do I place any value on driving social traffic? I honestly can't recall, and have watched a lot of your older videos. Yeah, there's certainly value in driving social traffic. And if you are into some social platform, go for it. Spend some time on it. I am not into any social platforms and don't really want to spend any time on it, so I don't. But is there value in it? Certainly. If you can get traffic, it's great. If you're into it, it's even better. If you don't care, I would say don't worry about it. The problem with the social traffic is typically, not always, typically you have to keep putting effort into it. So you can publish some stuff on Instagram, for example, and it might be great for a short amount of time, but if you don't continually feed the machine, the traffic's going to dry up. There are certain platforms that are better at that than others. There's always an algorithm in the back, and those algorithms can change. I think Pinterest has shifted a little bit, so I don't know, where things land now, but certain strategies worked really well for a while, and then they kind of were overdone, and the algorithm shifted, and then people on Pinterest had to shift as well. So certainly value. and some of them will have a longer shelf life. The content will have a longer shelf life. Some people consider YouTube as a social platform. It's kind of in the middle. So I think there are certain pieces of content and keywords that can bring in traffic over the long term, and you don't have to keep feeding the machine in the same way. But it depends on the kind of content, how you're producing the content in your specific niche. So when it comes down to it, if you're into whatever the social platform is, then spending time on it might make sense. Ariel says, do I reckon the multiples we are seeing now will last? I don't know. I don't know. The interesting thing with the multiples is they've been creeping up since I started, basically. So when I first started, it wasn't too unusual to see multiples like 20x the monthly profit. So if people are unfamiliar, we say multiples, and it's the value of a site, assuming that you could sell it, and you look at the monthly profits and you can multiply it by some factor. And essentially, you're getting the profits up front for roughly 2 to 4 years or so. So currently, I think the multiples are probably like in the high 20s to maybe the high 40s or so, depending on many, many factors. Could be the niche, could be the traffic sources, could be the revenue sources. The historical earnings make a big difference. Where the links come from, if there are backlinks, there's a lot of different factors that go into the valuation of a site. But if you have, for example, if you have long-term historical earnings, you have traffic from multiple sources, and you have revenue in multiple sources, maybe even some of your own digital products, the value of that site could be much higher. So will the multiples last? I don't know. I'm not good at the prediction kind of questions because I can't tell the future. So if I could, if I could tell the future, I probably wouldn't do these live streams. But it's a fair question. How long will the multiples last? They've been going up higher and higher since I started. And as time went on, people were saying, hey, these multiples, they're so high. It's not going to go up forever. And they've continued to go up. One reason is we have other markets like real estate, we have the stock market, all very high value. So they've continued to grow as well. Even through the pandemic, of course, there was a dip, but a lot of people have earned a lot of money. And if you had assets, those assets probably went up in value, most likely. So when that happens, investors are looking for other places that they believe are lower value. So someone may have some money. They think, hey, I want to get some real estate, but the real estate seems so expensive and it seems overvalued. So I don't want to buy something that seems overvalued. I want to buy something that seems like it's a good deal. And when you look at the niche sites and you can get a business for basically a couple years of the revenue, you can get paid back in 2 to 4 years. It's a really good deal. Now there's risk associated with that. That quick payback period comes back with a risk. But for example, if you have, I'll try to make the math easy, but I'll get screwed up on it anyway. So let's say you have $100,000 and you can buy a website or you can buy a piece of real estate. You're probably going to earn a lot more on a monthly basis, a cash flow basis on the website versus the real estate. And you may have to borrow the money, right? Again, there's risk factors here, but essentially you'll get paid back in like 2 to 3 years for the website. And it may take 15, 20 years to get paid back for the piece of real estate. Now, of course, the piece of real estate has different inherent value. There's probably a structure that's worth something, and there's probably a physical piece of real estate that's worth something. So it's never going to drop to zero, but there's potential for a website to drop to zero. Could be fairly unlikely, but if you ask enough people, they'll tell you, yeah, I had a website drop to, 10% of its previous value. That is probably not going to happen with a piece of real estate. So there's certainly trade-offs, but when you look at putting $100,000 down on something and what the cash flow is, it's a pretty drastic difference. All right, Adrian's on. What's happening? Another one of our fine moderators. And yeah, God says, so far, nobody has asked for a secret niche tonight. And Adrian says, my opinion, they will reach 50x and the norm will be 40x instead of 33 to 36, which is what it is for most sites now. Yes, definitely. It's definitely creeping up and up and up. So remains to be seen. But it wouldn't surprise me if it did, hit that amount. And I think if people look at what like Adam, for example, did at Niche Website Builders, check out that interview if you haven't yet. He did a pretty amazing flip, but you could do this on a smaller scale. So Adam bought the site for $60,000. Most of us don't have $60,000 laying around. By the way, I just recorded a podcast. I'm looking at my Trello board up here. I recorded a podcast where I talk about my website flipping story. And I bought a site for $4,000 and sold it for $12,500 last week. So very recent, and it's a lot more approachable. We got to do the clickbait headlines and all that, but when it comes down to it, most of us don't have the 60K to throw down. So that podcast is coming out on March 28th. So if you don't listen to the Doug Show, you should follow the link in the description there, because I will be publishing that episode only on the podcast side. I might do a shorter YouTube video in the future, but if you want the real meat, check out the podcast. Yeah, some people were saying it was a cool show with Adam. Yeah, it's always great to have those folks on. Niche Website Builders, and I could pop their little logo on here again. So do check them out. Like I mentioned, they got a special deal going on just for my audience this week. Follow the link in the description. It's actually 15% off or 15% higher, or more content. More content. And Keith mentions, thanks for contributing to the video roundup. Cool. And all right. And Adrian also says it's harder to grow a site now opposed to 2016, for example. So true. Yeah, the sites take a little bit longer to get going. And I listened to a lot of more like entrepreneur type podcast, not niche site focused podcast. And they do talk about our niche sites. And one of the things is kind of what you're getting at there, Adrian, is it's a lot harder to grow these sites and the values have not yet caught up. So if you have a site if you have a site that's earning X amount and it's already through the sandbox and you're proving that it can rank, $1,000 a month, for example, that's a pretty amazing asset, and you can potentially, in the right hands, grow it very large. And if someone has the skills like Adam, he can identify a site that's a pretty good value where he can go in, make some changes, tweak it, maybe just publish a lot more content, and then be able to raise the value of that site and earn more by a pretty huge factor. And John says that was a good breakdown of real estate versus niche sites. Everyone has a different time frame, and there's a good point in another podcast at looking at a website in a long-term way, like a 5-year plan. See you later, Chris. We'll catch you soon next week, or hopefully in the morning tomorrow for the big show. Walter says, would your aim always be to flip a website? Or would you consider holding on to a site for 10 years if it's performing well? So generally, my aim is not to flip a website. It just happened to be the way it worked out. In fact, I typically don't flip websites. So that's almost never my goal, and it wasn't my goal. I think I just looked at the stuff that I'm working on and I thought, hey, this particular website could do really well if someone put the time into it. And I don't want to put the time into it. It was a good run for a couple years. I earned some money. I talked about it a few times, and I think someone else can grow it and spend time with it and work on it. So I just decided to get rid of that project, which is fantastic. I highly encourage people to get things off their plate, and then you won't be as stressed out. So as far as holding on to a site for 10 years plus, if it's performing well, potentially, yeah, I consider anything. I'm certainly not dogmatic about really anything. So I wasn't thinking I was going to flip the website that I did, but over the course of a week or so, I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll sell that thing. And then, and then I did. And a couple weeks later, I sold it to someone and it was great. So I would say holding on to it for 10 years, sure, I'd be open to it, but I would say it's a very low probability that I would start something and think I'm hanging on to this for 10 years. It's almost zero chance because I would keep revisiting, maybe every quarter, every 6 months or so, and think, do I want to hang on to this? Is this something that I still enjoy working on? Is it growing? Do I give a shit? All those kind of details. But if it's performing well, I would certainly consider it. Ruby has a good question, and we'll finish up. I think Alex is starting his live stream in a minute. So hold on, everybody. Stay with me here. And then we'll pop over to Alex's for a minute. So, or you stay for the whole thing with Alex. I got to go work out, which I'll talk more about in a second. All right, Ruby says, if I had to start a business from scratch today, would I still do niche sites or would I do something else? So, Ruby, great question. I'm going to assume that I have the skills that I have right now, and I would probably, I would probably, I mean, it would be what I'm doing now, right? So I would aim for podcasting. And this is one of those, I'll answer it a couple ways. So if I have all the skills and I have my network and everything, but I'm just like, I'm starting from scratch with no money or something, then I would potentially start a podcast and a YouTube channel. And I really enjoy that type of content and that approach. I literally did it again in 2021 with the Mile High Fi show. If I don't have the skills and network that I have right now, I potentially would consider niche sites again, along with the podcasting. As I'm thinking it through, I believe I probably would start with niche sites because it's the foundation for like all the skills that I had, plus the network that I created, and the fact that all of the fine people are watching this right now is all rooted back at the first crappy niche site that I started when I didn't know how to use the keyword research tools and I didn't know what I was doing. It all goes back to that. And it was great foundational skills for keywords, writing content, learning WordPress, and expanding from there to digital products. So I would say niche sites are still a good place to start. And the other sort of contender, it's a tough one, is potentially YouTube. I do enjoy YouTube as well. It introduces a whole other set of skills and things to work on, but both help you communicate in some capacity. So even with the niche sites, I mean, I wrote most of the original content on my sites. I always hired writers, but I wrote a lot of the original stuff. And it all comes down to communication, which help things in the long run. And God says you're still here too. So awesome. All right, last question here from John. You're looking for writers in a particular niche. Where to go? You can go, I'll give you a couple quick tips. Go to Upwork. There's writers who may have skills in any given area. Just put it in your job posting. It may not work out. There may not be many of them there. So you could actually go over to a forum where people are in that niche. If you don't see a forum associated with the topic area, then maybe there's Facebook groups, but you could find where people are hanging out. You could also just go, I think there's like pro blogger type forums. I think that's the name of them, or the pro blogger job board, and try to find someone who's qualified in that specific area. So no magic to do it. You just have to go out and find where the people are at. And then you may have to pay more if you're looking for pros in that specific area. All right. Well, that's it for today. It looks like my friend Matt just popped in as I was closing out. Matt, we're gonna go over to WP Eagle. He just went live, so I'm gonna say hello there before I hit the gym. And I think we're gonna close it out. I almost forgot that someone asked me to play guitar, so I think I have it set up right here, and I'll just play a couple chords because I'm not really set up for that. And then I'm gonna have to stand up and then press stop. So I think, oh yeah, it's right there. It's right there. We'll put the microphone this way. I'm not sure what I'm gonna play here. Hopefully this whole mic stand's not gonna fall down.